All righty, let's go. 2-0 Phoenix Rising victory. Welcome into the PHNX Rising post game. Phoenix Rising with goals, first time goal scorers for JP Scearce, Pape Mar Boy. Scearce.
Come on, Max. Get it right.
Thank you for correcting me right off the top. We don't rest for nothing, not even pronunciation. But yes, 2 goals right off the top for 2 first-time goal scorers. It was a game. Dollar beer nights were flowing. Fans were very much in it. There was a lot going on, both in between first and final whistle and, well, a little bit before, a little bit after, but that's how we go. I am Max Simpson. I'm joined by the micless, soon to be mic'd up, Mr. Owain Evans. How are we doing, buddy?
Yeah, we're a single mic. That's why we're a bit late, boys, today. Boys and girls watching along at home. It turns out that sometimes technology is not our friend. I mean, can you believe it?
I mean, that's the typical PHNX Rising experience. If you're not going,
it's a typical day to day, isn't it? Like tech has been nobody's friend today.
Yes, that's correct. If you're not going down to one mic at one point during the season, or even a PHNX Rising fan, what are we doing here? Come on now.
Is that producer Eric in the chat? 2 goals, 1 microphone.
Sure is. It sure is. Well, listen, set the stage a bit again. Phoenix Rising. Coming into this match, again, we kind of said it. They're playing an El Paso team. That's not good.
No. And I think that's the context here, right? If we're going to talk about this game, we need to talk about it in, I think, a few different ways. Number one, right, you needed a win. This team desperately needed a win. It's for confidence. It's for just in general, I think, right? There was fight out there today, but there's been fight in a lot of these games. But they needed, I think, to see that rewarded. They needed to get over the hump. It's one of those ones where it's hard sometimes when you get in a rut to get back out of that rut. And today was a critical part of getting out of that rut. It is also, as you pointed out, a game against a team who are lowest in the West, who are now on a streak after today of 399 minutes without scoring a goal. Haven't scored a goal in not quite half, but almost half of their games so far this season. They're not good, particularly. They had a couple of issues with some illness around the camp, which doesn't, of course, help. Now, they weren't decimated by that from what we saw today, but they did have a few issues there. And again, the context is this is the team that are bottom of the league. You should be getting this job done at home against that team. Now, we've seen this team in the past, not necessarily this team, but the club as a whole, not do that in the past. So you can't necessarily belittle what happened tonight in that sense. But it is still valid context. Now, I'll get into it a little bit more, I think, about my views about the play on the field later, but that's the kind of overarching, I guess.
Yeah, no, well said. I mean, that's exactly it, right? We say you can only play who's in front of you, right? We were saying it, and goodness, some of us on this pod, we're not going to point fingers. We're predicting a loss. Some were predicting.
You would.
Well, you also didn't predict to win either. So,
I picked the draw.
Yeah, we'll do. Anyway, listen, you got to play who's in front of you. This was an El Paso team that was very, there was a lot of inexperience in certain positions. There was a lot of people who were out. Yes, like you mentioned, due to illness, there was just a lot going on. Again, this is an El Paso team that has just been not doing well as of late. Really, context of the whole season, but especially in this last month plus. So not great there. Phoenix Rising did the job. Again, this is probably we're kind of getting into it of, right, the play on the field, right? You scored 2 goals, got picked up a lot more in the second half. There was a bit more of a surge, right? We've seen this before. Phoenix Rising, they're going in towards the south end, get a little bit of that burst. Dollar beer night, it's flowing. You kind of saw a bit more of that attacking threat and just taking up higher positions on the field. It was very clear very early on that once El Paso wasn't really able to capitalize from any sort of, maybe there's a couple set pieces here and there that's at least something in their own end, they're not going to sustain pressure in Rising's half. And Rising did a really good job keeping that high line. Pape Mar Boy was a stud tonight, absolutely, and really was just able to play a high line, push them back. You kind of saw as the game wore on, second half, this was Rising's to get. They ended up getting the second goal, but I think really the focus and what we were talking about, that was not the case in the first half. And in the first half, we saw a lot more of the same. And when you're playing a team like you are in El Paso, it's not great to see.
Look, the thing about it is that I think, and this is the way I'd look at the game as a whole, it did follow, I think, a storyline similar to one that we've seen quite a few times before, right? The team comes out in the first half. Maybe they get a few chances, not necessarily the most threatening. In this case, they do get the goal. And of course, it's important to see JP Scearce getting on the score sheet, right? The local boy. Always good to see those things happening. But as you then look into the second half, what you see, I think, at that point is just a case of, again, it's a lot of pushing, going for the second goal, really, really getting in there. They have a few opportunities that maybe they should have put away, maybe they shouldn't have. I think the Rito one, in a little bit of a way, it's tough because of the angle. I think that the way you look at that, I think from the outside, is the ball went across the face of goal, right? But obviously there was no one really following it up in a more central position. So it wasn't as though you think, oh, they were that close really to getting it. I think a save is probably the expected outcome there. It'd be unfair to expect him to have put that one away. There were a couple of other opportunities that maybe Rising should have put away and didn't. And then, of course, they do get a second goal. Now, where this differs, I think, from the previous games in large part is that, again, you're playing an El Paso team that aren't very good. It's easier to have a performance that I think in some ways at large is similar to what we've seen in other games. And partly that's because El Paso do sit deep. They sat deep. They were, I think, quite held their shape quite well in general, I think, in that first half, and really restricted Rising from being able to do a whole lot of anything. There's a reason I think people were getting frustrated. There's a reason that people were, I know I was up around the north end where the fans behind us were kind of shouting like, shoot, shoot. And I get it, right? The ball's going out into wide areas. Often they're kind of trying to force it in, but not seeing a whole lot of options, and end up often turning back or slowing down and giving away possession, right? And that's partly because El Paso, I think, were quite well structured. They held their shape quite well. I thought they defended quite well in the first half. Obviously, when you score a goal, that changes. When you break that down, and El Paso, I don't think had a whole lot to offer in terms of attacking threat, that completely changes at that point, right? It's just a very, very different game when you do find the net. And in this case, it was a set piece. But again, second half, they're pushing. They do ultimately find the goal. Against a better opponent, do they necessarily come away with a 2-0 win? Do they necessarily come away with a win? I'm not sure. However, win's a win. As you said earlier, you can only beat the team that is in front of you. And there were some good individual performances, I think, in amongst this.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, saw it as the game went on that El Paso had to get a little bit stretched. They're just, once it was very clear, and this was, I mean, I would say probably after the first goal going to the second half, it kind of hit a point, probably I would say, give or take around the 50th, 60th minute. El Paso, there's not going to be anything going forward. It was very clear they lost any sort of momentum. Really, the first goal at the end of the first half, that was kind of the nail in the coffin in terms of like momentum that all that they've built. And then going to the second half, it's kind of really all Rising. Even if it's not a dominant performance, the momentum is within Rising, even by default, just where the match is at with 1-0, everything like that. You kind of just saw this is how they played against these teams where, they're not offering a lot of attacking threat. You kind of have to, again, you play who's in front of you. I think it is going to be interesting to see the evolution with this team, new players coming into place, which, we'll touch on, how people are going to rise to the challenge and what's still missing with this club. But again, we saw a lot of great standout performances. I will dive in further. I do want to shout out the chat, right? Always got to shout out the chat. You guys are just absolutely crushing it per usual. Joining us here after a rowdy dollar beer night, 80 AZ. Let's go. Albert, chatting with you over in the South End. Love that. Alexander, hi y'all. Pod on the drive home. Merge Gaming. Charlie Dennis, the hero. You're darn right. Andrew Dang, appreciate you. Kieran Thompson, what would the score have been if we had a striker? That's fair. James C, win. Devenant in the chat. Lazy Cuber 12, everyone. We got, here we go. This guy's already trying to cut me off per usual, but all right. Yeah. But no, again, appreciate everyone joining us. Here's the thing. We're chatting through, right, the people who really made an impact for this team tonight. And there's a couple obvious candidates, right? We'll get into our man of the match in a second, but I think the one that a lot of people are talking about, we've seen even shouts in the chat for him to play striker in his debut appearance with Phoenix Rising. Let's talk about Charlie Dennis.
I don't know why people are saying play striker. No, he was decent. I thought he was decent. He came in and did what they expected him to do. I think he provided a more physical presence in the middle of the park while also being quite attack-minded. Played a little bit higher up, obviously, but did track back on times. I think, again, right, we said this when he came in, right, that we thought that you can have the question of, is he the difference maker? Is he going to be the big change that kind of, fixes, per se, the problems that we have seen in this team? And we weren't sure about that. But we did also say, of course, that he is perfectly capable of coming in and making an impact. He is a talented player. His addition to this team could well be an improvement. It depends on how they plan on using him, of course. That's always an important part. And it depends on how he performs alongside his teammates, many of which he knows already, has already played alongside, and that's a pretty critical part of this. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where just, it's a decent performance on his debut. I think he showed flashes of some really good play. And I'm interested to see further what he can do in subsequent weeks. Again, decent performance, decent debut. I know a lot of people in here say things like he's tall, could be good at target on set pieces. Devon with Dennis was good today. Again, people feeling that, this is a pretty decent addition. I think it was. I think most of us recognized that. Now, again, of course, the question becomes how you translate some of those underlying statistics that we saw him put in both in Tampa Bay and in Oakland, and make sure that the outputs look more like they did in Tampa Bay than they did in Oakland. That's going to be the critical part here, because again, we know he has talent. It's about making sure that talent, making sure the process, all of that adds up. All of that adds up with, of course, goals, assists, and at the end of the day, wins, because this is a results game.
Yeah. No, that's exactly. I mean, again, right, we're talking about this. And this will not be the point of this post game, but again, goes with mention, as we're probably going to say next week. This club still without prominent striker, and at least depth at prominent striker, especially Remy Cabral, not in tonight.
Yes. Injury update. Injury update from the post game press conference with Diego is that of the three guys that were out injured today, the hope is that at least two of the three will be in contention for next week.
Good to note there. So, right, missing depth behind Remy and even another striker to factor in the mix. One of the big problems as well with this team is needing to find someone who can open up and unlock the spaces in the midfield, right? Again, a la that Carlos Harvey role. Again, many times I've said, you don't just replace Carlos Harvey. Carlos Harveys don't grow on trees. But in a way, there is a possibility that Charlie Dennis, with the makeup that he has, with being able to be that tall physical presence, with being able to have that attacking mindset moving forward, could be in a way someone who maybe isn't exactly Carlos Harvey, but at least can be someone who finds a little bit of that DNA that this team did lose this season. So there's hope there. We'll see what happens. And again, I know the big thing is finding people to play alongside him, right? We saw a nice cameo tonight. What is this going to look like when you extrapolate it out of 45 minutes, 60 minutes, a full 90, like stuff like that? That's going to be interesting to see. And really, to your point, what type of play we're getting here. Absolutely. The other thing, right, want to talk about man of the match, right? Man of the match, it is Pape Mar Boy. Pape Mar Boy crushed it, man. He crushed it. This is even before the goal. This guy was absolutely everywhere. We're talking about, right, accurate passing, aerial duels, clearances, all of that stuff. He was streaked across the field for one of these clearances and just pounding his chest, absolutely winning the ball. He just was able to hold a high line, and this guy, for what he lacks maybe in the passing, he more than makes up for it in his recovery. Showed it with a goal, which is a nice flash there. Pape Mar Boy, your man of the match. Very quickly, we'll also get you into just our by the numbers presented by our friends at Desert Financial Credit Union, Arizona's #1 credit union, named by fours. Again, Phoenix rising 2-0 over El Paso. XG dominated there, 1.43 XG. Expected goals, 2.34 for El Paso Locomotive. Possession, 59-41. Shots, double, 15 for Rising, 8 for El Paso, and then shots on goal, 7 for Rising, 2 for El Paso. Look at that. They actually got half of their shots total were on goal. We like to see that. Owen, I know we've talked a lot, and we'll get into a break here in just a second, but we'll say this was one where I think for once in a while, the eye test matched up decently well with the stats we saw.
I think so, but again, it's The context of this always will be, and we have to be really clear on this, that this team they played against today is the worst team you are going to face in the Western Conference. You will not face them again this season, right? You've played them twice now. You picked up 4 out of 6 points. The draw away from home on the win at home. It gets more difficult from here. The challenge is stepping up from here because getting it done against this team, again, you can only beat who's in front of you, and that's something that you have to accept and you have to move on with. But you have to then kick on when you face better teams. You have to see the same kind of just attacking threat, I think, that we saw at times in that second half against better teams. That has to be consistent, and you have to put those wins together. Now, Hartford are Hartford. You've got Colorado Springs coming up after that. And then you're coming back home. You've got a break again in August. I mean, if I'm honest, I wouldn't want to be playing games here in August. I don't really want to. I'm feeling hot right here already in July. But yeah, it was one of the better performances. But again, you have to see this against better teams. If you only do this against teams who are down around the bottom, it doesn't signify serious progress. And that's why, again, this game has to be taken with a pinch of salt. There are positives. You move on from them. You have to progress further from this. And we'll have to see next week if they're able to do so.
You darn right we will. Kieran in the chat. Pape Mar, my boy. Love that. Right. A lot of goals again scored. You can score with our friends at Circle K. Listen, it was dollar beer night, right? Okay. How much you pay for beer? $1. That's pretty cool and all. You could pay 79 cents at Circle K for a Polar Pop. I paid that. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. I paid 69 cents because I'm an Inner Circle member. Pretty nice deal there. One sec. Sorry, I just need to quench my thirst there. Circle K has the Polar Pop. Got a couple snacks as well on my way over. Check out Circle K Inner Circle program. Download today again to get that 69-cent Polar Pop. Save 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. And, of course, get all kinds of great stuff, right? Circle K. Check them out at participating locations. Terms and conditions do apply. See store locations for details. Also, shout out our friends, Valley Tap Room. Again, we're talking about beers flowing. Valley Tap Room. That's got those beers flowing all day, all night, baby. Oh, they got our Four Peaks, our friends at Four Peaks there. Of course, they also have 2 locations, Gilbert and Queen Creek. We were at the Gilbert location for a little Euros watch party. Again, Spain City football. We already talked about that. And again, we're going to be at Queen Creek a little bit later in the season for some PHNX Rising exclusive stuff. So make sure to follow along at Valley Tap Room. Check them out. Again, 2 locations in person, Gilbert, Queen Creek. Follow them online at valleytaproom.com. Of course, check them out on social at Valley Tap Room. All right. Listen, again, the context of the games that it's important to paint is you have to play the opponents in front of you. Rising did that, but there is a bit of, I would say, from what we talked to people in person, people in the chat, there's a bit of a mix of cool, we got to win. Some guys integrated well, but I think it is, to your point, it's against a team that's not doing well, but I think it's more than that. There's an overwhelming just frustration of just how things have gone. And listen, we'll call it what it is. A lot is built to this point. This was the first home match since Danny Stone and Phoenix Rising parted ways, since guys have been brought in, since Diego Gomez has taken over as interim. There was a very charged atmosphere, to say the least.
Yeah, it was. And it's going to be, I think, a complex atmosphere in general around the club for a while. It's kind of the nature of how these things work, right? It's not easy to go through, I think, as a club in the way the process they're going through is at the moment. Manager was let go, who was quite popular among the fan base. You can tell that by the fact that there was a large "Thank You, Danny Stone" banner along the South End railing. Was obviously part of it. Obviously, there were other things that were up today as well. I think we can probably start with the first one and the biggest one that went up before the game. I think producer Eric does have this one around, and it is not that one. That's the smaller one that goes up. Okay, there we go. Look, obviously we've seen these things boiling over on social media in the past few weeks. And it says in here, duly out McCarthy out. It's obviously aimed at the club president, the club sporting director. It's also got pictures of them as jester hats and red noses, right? It was not the most flattering of depictions, I think is the way of putting it, right? And again, I think it's understandable where the fan base are coming from. They don't like the direction their club is going at the moment, and obviously that gets taken out on people like that. A comment from club president Bobby Dooley after the game about this was that he, appreciates the fact the fans care so much. They came out here and gave it 90 minutes, and that he doesn't duck away from accountability. And that they won't ever duck away from accountability for what goes on in the club. That's what Bobby Dooley told me after the match. But again, right, there's going to be tensions. There always are. You never really end up in a scenario where I think club hierarchy are universally loved by fans. That never happens anyway. But especially in a turbulent moment like that, it's not going to happen. Obviously, there was also the little banner there about Panos Amanakis, who's being at the moment held out over what's been described as disciplinary reasons. You can see it there on the screen. Free Panos is what that read. It came out again at the final whistle. And look, it comes from, I think, just a real frustration from the fan base at the direction that things are going in at the moment. And it's going to be hard. Now, obviously, at the final whistle, you see the happy scenes. You see the fact that, yes, the players are celebrating, the fans are celebrating, and you will after a win at home. And to an extent, maybe they needed that. All right. And that's where it comes from. I think it's the fans' anger isn't some kind of blanket. We want the club to fail. We want the players are all useless. They've never said that. And they are there with the players. They want the players to do well. And I think any suggestion that's not the case is just palpably false. Their issue, I think, is again with just the direction overall that the club is going in at the moment. And they feel, at least a portion of the support feels, that that's not a direction and they're happy with how it's going. And so what they're doing is lashing out at the people who they see as being responsible for that. And again, it's understandable. It's going to happen. Those tensions are going to be there. Obviously, emotions run high on nights like this. And especially given this has been boiling now for several weeks. It's kind of that thing. What do you really want in that scenario? Do you want it to be over with like the weekend after? Or do you want to let it simmer because it could get worse? Or it could... That's the thing. It's one of those things. Does it water down over time? Or does it almost like ferment?
Just looking. Yeah, it's by the way, shout out. There's almost 100 of you watching us live. Let's go. Five more people, right? Let's get to 100. Appreciate you guys. I mean, that is the question, right? We have said that this is the perfect storm and that this match was going to be an interesting one given the environment, right? It's been building to this point. It's not that like this team tried to sign a bunch of players and then boom, it didn't work out. Like, oh no, fans are upset because there was just maybe a lack of hubris.
Or not a lack of hubris. Hubris would be like ego. It's they see the image of what they think is hubris.
You know,
in some of the exchanges that have been happening.
You know what I was trying to say. Yeah, there's some ego. My brain, it's working. Boom. But yes.
I understand why they see that in some of these exchanges. Again, right? We've had the conversation about arguing with fans on Twitter. It doesn't help. It's never helped. It's one of those things that you're not going to... civil conversations on Twitter are few and far between anyway. And B, it's just intervening in a very highly emotional way directly like that just doesn't end well for anyone.
Yep. Also, yeah, hit that like button while you guys are in here. Almost to 100. Appreciate you guys. Bang! 100 people hit that like button. Thank you guys. Let's go. Yeah, again, it's been building just a lack of accountability in a way, that ego of boom. We don't need to sign players that are clearly lost and stuff like that. It was then again, Danny Stone, more or less perceived by a lot of people as being the fall guy. And then it just builds to this point of, again, like we understand it's early in the international kind of window when things open. There has been a striker brought in. All of this kind of these different points of boom, nothing in the offseason. Boom, Danny Stone takes the fall. Boom, no striker still. And you hit this point where a lot of this really came to a head 2 weeks ago 2-3 weeks ago, right? When Danny Stone was, they parted ways with him, and you build this point, circling on the map. Oh, this is happening, this next home match. And by the way, you throw $1 beer night on it. I mean, it's a perfect storm.
Yeah, I mean, again, we all kind of, I think, knew that there was going to be this kind of an awkward just atmosphere. Again, we knew it would be there. Winning helps. Winning cures a lot of things. Always has. But again, it's the context. This was the expectation. The club met the expectation on the field today. The key now is to do it in more difficult games. And I mean, I know earlier in the chat, John said about this was like the minimum, right? They concede a lot of goals, El Paso. Conversely, they don't score many goals at all. You expect the result like this when you're at home. It's almost the minimum. You can't, if anything less than that happened, it's a huge, huge disappointment. And that's what the club met today. But again, wins do cure things. Wins are important. And again, when you've been struggling, sometimes just hitting those targets can be an important step on the way to getting back into position.
Yep, very much so, right? It's going to be interesting where this club moves forward from here. Again, there's a lot of volatility. It's bringing on 2 players, right, who were recently announced later part of this week. Haven't had a ton of time to acclimate. They both featured off the bench in this match. You then have the other aspect of coaching situation, right? Diego Gomez, currently the interim. They bringing someone in. When does that process happen? What does that look like? There's going to be a lot of moving parts. And kind of as we'll see evolving throughout the rest of the season is which kind of Phoenix Rising are we going to see and where is this going to take form? We're going to see one kind of where 2022, Juan Guerra has come in. It's kind of, I'm not saying it's a wash of a season, but it's very much like, listen, the goal is playoffs. We're going to try to aim there. But this is very much, let's try to figure it out, rebuild next year. Is it going to look like that? Or is it going to look like, are we able to forge up and get something together to where we can make a run? I would say maybe it's somewhere in between, but I would say this club has a lot to do, and we're going to have to just see, man. It's the uncomfortable feeling of kind of waiting.
The way that Darius Formella said last year, nobody ever did it the way that we did it, and nobody will ever do it again. I think that's where I stand on this, right? This team may well make the playoffs. Entirely plausible. There's not a whole lot in there. I think that they finish away in one of the lower playoff spots. They probably play away from home in the first round. Maybe they get past it, but the likelihood is that they will not host a playoff game, I think, again, this season. And that puts you in a really awkward position, right? Because at the end of the day, that means this team then has hosted one single playoff game at home in 4 seasons. And when you think about the financials, you think about all of that side of things, that's not ideal for a club in this position. Where do they currently sit? Is that your questionable stats, Max? Get the real ones. Get the real ones. I know. And again,
I'm looking at the gap. It's a 5-point gap from second. 5-point gap
from second. Yeah, but that's not. It's doable. But again, it's. Does this team pick things up? And again, there's talent in there.
The West is crap. The West is crap this year.
It's not great. Well, the entire league is very much of a muchness.
But that's what I'm saying. That's the point. Listen, we're not, again, I'm not saying that, oh my gosh, Rising can go on a run. I'm not saying they need to go on a run. I'm saying, listen, if Phoenix Rising, they need to get, if you're able to grab points at home where you can, preferably wins, and draw on the road, it is feasible that with the ground you can make up, with people falling below you. I'm not trying to get people's hopes up, but this is not a lost season. Again, I think it's somewhere in the middle. This is not a retool, rebuild. Oh, we kick the ball down the road, shoot for 2025. No, but if you want to host a playoff match, which is this team's intention, there is so much work to do. The only way that might help you out is because the West is in shambles.
Yeah, the league's just very, very level in general. So Rising sits in 8th at the moment by virtue of head-to-head against Orange County. Of course, they won that game. So they do hold the tiebreaker over Orange County, who are on the same points.
Yes, absolutely. Seeing people in the chat, they're just saying just make the playoff spots. What you can also do, make yourself a nice beer selection with our friends at Four Peaks Brewing. Check them out. Of course, they have their 8th Street Pub in Tempe. Great place to grab a beer. Also, they have Four Peaks at both Valley Tap Room locations, as I've said before. Check them out. Four Peaks. They have the seasonal menu, all that great stuff. Nice way to cool off, beat the heat. Check them out. Find them at a local beer place near you at fourpeaks.com. Follow them on socials at Four Peaks Pub and at Four Peaks Brew on socials. Keep it with the latest and greatest going on at Arizona's hometown brewery. I mean, you must be 21 years or older to enjoy responsibly. Mr. Owen, I believe you have some scores you want to read.
Yeah, we'll do the three other games across the USL Championship tonight. Charleston Battery 2, Miami FC 0. North Carolina FC 1, Detroit City 1.
Draw.
And Louisville City 2, Colorado Springs Switchbacks 1.
Ripening them up for us in 2 weeks, even though it's on the road.
They couldn't hear most of those, I'm sure, Max. The game's tomorrow. Indy 11 versus Tampa Bay Rowdies. Pittsburgh Riverhands take on Hartford Athletic. FC Tulsa against Memphis 901. New Mexico United against Birmingham Legion. And Orange County against San Antonio. One Sunday game, which will be on CBS. Oakland Roots against Sacramento Republic.
Yeah, I'll do it. Goodness gracious. Well, what's next for Rising? Well, first, hopefully a couple signings in the meantime. Right. Hopefully there's a lot of fruit to bear in this coming week, but they're going to Hartford. Go on to Hartford on the road. It's going to be a Friday, I guess, afternoon AZ time matchup. Owen as he drags his head.
Another of those not midweek, but weekday away games out east.
That's a clippable shot for anyone who...
We get a Saturday game on the East Coast. Come on.
There's a lot of clip gold right there for you people, and our sleuths will bring it up. But, do you have anything else for the people?
No, I'm going to go home and sleep.
That's very fair. Well, appreciate everyone joining us here at the PHNX Rising podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at PHNX__rising, because double the underscore.
I'll let you take this one.
I'll happily take it. Double the goals. How about that? You can follow me. Original. You can follow me on Twitter at Makes David Simpson. You can follow the Oracle on Twitter at OJ Evans 18. You can follow producer Eric Ruby behind the Mac doing the magic at ERIKRUBY, the Diamond Man himself. Appreciate everyone joining us again. We're going to be back next week. Not our usual Tuesday, Thursday because of the Friday game. It's going to be Monday, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Again, one more time, Monday, Wednesday, 6 p.m. live, PHNX Sports YouTube. Hit that like button on the way out. Appreciate everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend. And it is a beautiful game, but it's way more beautiful when you drink beer, you score goals, you get 3 points. Yeah, there you go. Good night.
We all silly like the mayor.